Welcome to another very special Turnbuckle Trash Talk interview. I am here with Mr. A1 since day one, Sage Scott. Sage, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, brother.
So, I want to start at the very beginning, as I do in most of these interviews. I want to start with little Sage, baby Sage, whatever time this journey started for you. What was it about wrestling? What's your first wrestling moment? What called to you and got your attention as a young fan?
Well, me growing up in South Central Los Angeles, aggression was always something that was just around. So to see, I guess, contain aggression, like, oh my God, like you actually can slam this guy and there's no police that are gonna come after this. Like that's pretty cool. And plus, it was like a very defiant thing to do in my house because my parents weren't really down with us watching wrestling. So we had to always sneak and watch it at first until we got a little bit of age, and then we started to watch it more frequently. But it was just basically just the entertainment factor of it. I was just captivated at a young age. I got little boys underneath me that are pretty much following in daddy's footsteps. So it just seems like everything's coming full circle. So that's for me, it was probably what pretty much got me on the track that I am right now.
Now, was there a distinct moment or a person or something specific that you connected with or related to most? Like, was there a particular wrestler or a particular event or company or anything like that that you found was like, yeah, that's what I want to be like, or that's just what I enjoy the most?
People ask me that all the time, and it's so crazy because I can't remember the episode, but I know it was SmackDown, and I know it was early days of SmackDown. And I just remember flipping through the television after my dad had left the room and just so happened to stumble across wrestling. It was Chris Jericho. I'm almost positive it was Bob Backlund. He had in the walls of Jericho, and he was bleeding out of his mouth. And I don't know what the scenario, what the storyline, what caused that, but as soon as I saw that, it was like the next day I'm in trouble at school because I got the dude in the walls of Jericho. And it's like, so from there, I think it was definitely Chris Jericho. Actually, he was the first guy that I like, okay, he's the reason why I want to do it. Later on, other guys, you started to like other guys, but definitely from my deepest archives of memories, it was probably Chris Jericho that started off for me.
So what was it that made you decide this is what I want to do? Not just what I want to mimic or not just what I enjoy watching or I'm a fan of. Well, when were you like, I am going to be a professional wrestler? That is my path. That is my goal. That is my career.
Well, for me, growing up, football was always the first goal. I always liked the wrestling. I'm not going to say I loved it too, but I never knew the avenue to go for wrestling. I knew the avenue for football. It's easy. You go to high school, you play, you ball out, scouts look at you, and, college is the next step, and then you take it from there. There's no real avenue out of high school, at least off the surface, that says, okay, you do this, and then you'll be in WWE. So it was always in the back burner for me. It was like, okay, well, if something by miracle happens, it happens. Definitely football was always the goal, but I guess call it divine intervention because, social media, and we live in a social media time, and I have friends who knew I was always into wrestling. Even when I was on the football field, I would mimic wrestling. My Enzo dance had something to do with wrestling. It whatever. I was always talking in the school, walking around, sweet chin music, people in class. And then I guess people would tag me in different schools that were around. And the WN Academy was the first one that seemed in a decent price range for me. And I just took a stab at it and then just let my athleticism speak for itself.
So you said you started off in South Central Los Angeles. How did you find yourself in Florida? What was the journey and kind of the path that led you there?
Well, you can thank Mama Dukes for that because she knew before I knew my potential. I really wasn't trying to hear that back then. She saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. So she was the one that uprooted everybody and said, we're gonna go live out, towards her family. It was mostly out here by Pompano Beach and stuff like that. And we just so happened to have a grandma that lived in St. Petersburg. So we kind of rooted ourselves here a little bit more. It's not every neighborhood is gonna have its rough areas, but for the most part, it's a lot more peaceful here, and you can actually focus on yourself as a person, not necessarily have to worry about being violent just to get by. You actually you can channel that violence in a setting that it's suited for, like as in wrestling or football or whatever, mentally, academically, So that was for me, and probably it's mama. Always mama. Always goes back to mama.
So you find the WWN Training Academy. What was, the process getting into that? What was the training process like? Like, take me through the journey from I want to become a wrestler to I have become a wrestler.
Well, for me, I was in a pretty decent class with Jake Jones and Avery Taylor. I just kind of like stumbled in. I was like, well, I watch it on TV. Let's just see how it is. The first week or so, I think the worst part of the beginning of the training was for me. I got a very muscular built, and I don't know if this happens for everybody, but my lower back was killing me from hitting the ropes. And I was like, man, hope this doesn't be like it's just like always how it's gonna always feel to hit the ropes. But eventually that goes away and your body gets used to it. But yeah, I mean the condition, I was just more impressed by. I'm thinking, okay, well, it's no big deal. It's kind of like standing still. You're doing a couple moves here and there. You're working the crowd. You have to really be in pretty good cardiovascular shape. And I was like, I took a little bit for granted at first. I'm like, whatever, I'm just gonna breeze by with athleticism, and that definitely wasn't the case. I got my ass kicked a lot on some of those drills going forward, but until I finally started to realize that, okay, hey, you need to put just as much effort as you did in your other endeavors as you do wrestling. So in the beginning for me, it was mostly like the small things. Arm drags, arm bars, hip tosses, this little stuff, that was like, oh, wow, this the slightest thing. I seen people get hurt and was out for months starting out just off of just the hip toss, so you have to, attention to detail is everything. Always pay attention to the little things, and that was something that, you actually have to use your brain just as well as your physical abilities in wrestling, and it's not just, a bunch of big dumb jocks out here throwing each other around, and I find that out real soon.
So I know football training can also be very physically demanding, as can wrestling training, and it does include those elements you mentioned about character and like being very crisp and precise in your moves and everything like that. Which do you think was more challenging for you or more difficult for you? Was it football or was it wrestling?
I'm not gonna lie. I think it was wrestling because football just came natural. Everybody in my family played football. I grew up watching it. I grew up watching wrestling too, but no one really was like coaching me about, oh man, like he did this and he missed that, or like I do my boys. Like my boys growing up, as soon as Monday night and Tuesday night comes around, they know at 2-3 years old, they know when wrestling's coming on, and I'm sitting back critiquing everything. I didn't have that growing up. They're getting a different experience than what I did, because when I watched wrestling, it wasn't cool to watch wrestling. Even though I grew up in the Attitude Era, not everybody was on that. They thought it was, juvenile, and it wasn't always the hip thing to certain demographics, especially in my family. Cause I got a lot of older relatives, not too many ones that are my age or when I was growing up, so they didn't understand. But yeah, that was probably the biggest thing for me right there.
So you finished training at WWN. Tell me about your first match. I talk to a lot of wrestlers. They all say my first match was my worst match. They never want to watch it back. They don't, So I had one guy say he even pooped his pants in his first match, literally. What do you remember most about your first match? Who was it against? What was that experience like? Were you nervous? Go into just as much detail as you can about your first match.
Oh man, my first match was at a birthday party in Tampa with Jake Jones, and we was in the main event. Way to break you in. Yeah, we're just going to give you guys 15-20 minutes. Just go out there and do your thing. So, yeah, it was a birthday party. I remember the setting, it was raining. So we was setting up the ring in the rain. I didn't even think the show was even going to happen. The rain ended up subsiding. It was in the backyard of a Latino family. They were having a birthday party. And I'm thinking, okay, it's a birthday party. It shouldn't be that bad. Maybe 10 or 15 kids or whatever. Ended up being like 80 people. They had the whole barbecue, they even rented a snow cone machine. They had it was barbecue, it was everywhere. It was almost like at a carnival event, but it was in a backyard. So, we all know in wrestling, the smaller the venue, it can make 80 people look like 1,000, So for me, definitely, it's funny you say that about the toilet, because I'll share the story because I don't care. It is what it is. I didn't know, certain things you weren't supposed to eat before you go out to wrestle. And like I said, it's a Latino party. It's a lot of Mexican food, Spanish food, whatever. And they had this. What they do? They got the fruit cups, and they put like the little chili pepper on it and spice it up. I'm like, yeah, My trainer's like, oh, you got to go out there. You'll love it. You'll love it. I'm eating it, and I'm thinking only like an hour or two before the show starts, I'm starting to get really, really bubbly gutty, and I run into their bathroom to go use it because everybody else didn't want to use the bathroom in there. We didn't know these people. I went in there, and of course, the toilet doesn't flush. And none of them really speak any English, so I can't really tell them that, hey, I'm in here letting go, and there's no toilet that can flush. So I had to literally become a plumber and, like, go up in their back of their toilet and flush it, like, manually and stuff like that. So, yeah, it was definitely embarrassing, and I walk out of the room, and there's, like, all the women from the party sitting in there doing hair and getting themselves ready for the show, and I'm, like, in there struggling. And it's like, yeah. So it was definitely a little embarrassing, but when I went out there, kind of the same way I'm about everything. My thing is, if you're not getting any nerves or any butterflies from going out there, you don't really have the passion for it like that. Of course, they subside. The first, I think it's probably when you hit that curtain, it's kind of when it kind of goes away. Once you get that first initial reaction from the crowd, it kind of goes away. But just like in wrestling and football, I always get nervous before any show, and it ended up being a pretty decent show. I mean, I've heard from plenty of people that trust me, I've had worse, and these are people who are high ups, in different companies. Like, yeah, for a first match, that was about as good as it's gonna get. So, and then it happened to be somebody I've been training with for the last year, so in Jake Jones. So it made for a pretty interesting night.
So, after that first match, you've gone on to travel all over Florida. Have you gone out of state yet?
Actually, it's funny you say that because actually we just started branching out because I was kind of the person that didn't really, when you cut your teeth, you take advice from certain people, as you go on in your wrestling career, you start to weave out what is good advice and what's not so good advice. So, yeah, definitely, you people would just think just because you're in Florida, you're in the mecca of wrestling, you don't have to go anywhere. It's not true. You need to branch out, So I'm actually getting some more bookings and trying to go back home in California, maybe wrestle in front of some home cooking. Georgia has definitely been reached out, and I've got New Jersey and New York coming up. So we're trying to get as many as we possibly can, and of course I got my new group, so we're trying to push.
Well, that's a perfect segue. Now you've got the Midnight Tribe. This has almost, in my mind, as someone who's watched you, for probably over a year now, completely redefined Sage Scott as the fans know it. What was the thought process in coming up with the Midnight Tribe, in getting together with David King and Jackson Duvalier? What kind of inspired all of that, and what direction did you guys head with it, and where do you see it going from here?
Well, it's funny because everything I say in the ring about it is completely true. It's not a show. That's exactly how we feel, and especially, and it all starts with me. Like, I feel like I've been here long enough to where I should be featured more. And coming from the background that I have, I see a lot of these guys, most of them have no athletic background whatsoever. They just rolled up off the couch, said, I want to be a wrestler, I'm a fan, and became wrestlers. And they happen to be pretty good characters. But end of the day, what separates the men from the boys is experience, physical experience, and that's the reason why people love Brock Lesnar so much, because he has physical experience in other aspects. And a lot of wrestlers come from a football background or some kind of sports background. And for me, I'm just not used to being not considered like the top guy, or around the top. For football, it just came natural. Always started. I never really rode the pine, and that's what I feel like I was doing. Is riding the pine, watching all these guys. Don't get me wrong, I love seeing people get their shine. I love this. There's certain people who I'm actually a fan of, not just because we're friends, but because I'm legitly a fan of their work. I'll name drop Aaron Nova is one of my guys, even though he may disagree about my weight and my stature, but that's none of his business. But other than that, you're not gonna find too many guys, generally good guys in the locker room, because a lot of these guys are in it for themselves. And he's literally out to help, So, yeah, it was just for me. It was a point of frustration. Then I see these guys, I see they're kind of going up in the same direction I was going. Like they're good, they're big, they're athletic, but I feel that they wouldn't be afterthoughts after about 6 months, just like I was. And I was like, this is a perfect opportunity to get 3 guys with some pent-up frustration who look good, who should be able to pack any arena they go to, just off of presence alone. I'm like, man, I just had a vision of like, you know what, I'm gonna shoot for the stars, and whatever happens, happens.
Well, and I think it's definitely been working. And going back to what you're saying about like guys rolling off the couch and getting into wrestling, I've found that a lot of wrestlers can be defined into two categories: either really athletic or really good character. Really strong on the mic or presence or whatever it is, that thing. And it's been really great because I always considered you an athletic wrestler for the longest time. Watching your in-ring work is a spectacle, to say the least. And it's been so great since you joined Midnight Tribe, or started Midnight Tribe, I should say, seeing more of that character. Even if it is you being true to yourself, a lot of these guys, it's just themselves amplified to 11, and so seeing more of that come out has almost started to like merge the two categories for you into what I think is going to be an incredible career. So let's go back and talk about the time in between. What was the biggest moment for you in wrestling so far? Biggest match, best opponent, best promotion to be a part of, best, whatever the case is, what was your biggest moment?
My biggest moment, which is crazy because for this life of me, I can't find the footage of it, but it was when I was just starting here, and they were starting to figure out, well, they didn't know what they were going to do with me. They kind of paid me with Treehouse Lee, and we were going to be a tag team. That's actually was the original plan. It was going to be me and him, two athletic guys. I'm like, all right, cool, let's run with it. But then I guess they want to test me to see where I was at, and they booked me with Saeed. And the people out there watching will know who Saeed Al-Sabah is probably one of the best indie wrestlers out right now, period. And, that right there was it's still my biggest match, my biggest singles match. And it got to the point where I never got hit up so much after a match than the match I had with him. And I know it had nothing to do with me. It's it's his ability to bring the best out of you, and that's what you want to be. You want to be somebody who can bring the best out of anybody you work with, and he definitely got it out of me that night, which got me more bookings at other companies. They seen the match, word of mouth, and that was definitely my biggest moment. And for me, this is the home brand for me. I do other things. I'm out Tampa Bay Pros and the Warrior Breeze and all these companies outside Pro Wrestling 2.0. I do a lot of different companies, but ACW, I've always felt like I had something to prove here. It's like, okay, I started here. I mean, the school, I started at the school that is attached to this company, so it's like homegrown talent almost. And I feel like I can't move on until I reach the pinnacle here. I'm always gonna feel like it's like an incomplete assignment. This is for me. This is the holy grail for me. I mean, of course, you want bigger and better opportunities that are gonna come forth, but I feel like I can't. I always feel like even if I go on to somewhere that's like a big pristine company, I always have the back of my mind like, there was something else left there. I left out there. I should have, took care of that before I moved on. That's just how I am. So.
Yeah, basically you feel like you have unfinished business in ACW. So what has been the biggest challenge for you in reaching that pinnacle and finishing that business? Some might say, well, the promoter's holding me back, or, another person might say, it's something in myself. I haven't hit that thing, that's made me into the star I want to be, and they're still trying to find it. Like you were talking about Saeed, I can see a very similar trajectory for you as Saeed, because he's got the same athleticism you do, but his character is also so strong. And so I'm like, seeing the work you've been doing, I could see you heading that direction. What's been your biggest challenge?
And I think you just hit it on the nail on the head, because that's basically what's been preached into my head. It's character. Because if I can get my character as strong as the athletic ability, then you're right there with a guy like Saeed Al-Sabah. And I know that was going to be my weakest thing, because I'm not a shy person. I don't have a problem speaking in front of people, clearly, and I don't have a problem competing or doing things in front of people. It's just I was just so wrapped up in, I'm just gonna amaze the crowd with all these cool things I can do in the ring, and not realizing that, if you're just an athletic wrestler, and it's only some places that's gonna be like, okay, you're gonna appeal to a certain fan base. But if you can do that and have a great character, then you can go anywhere and give them anything they want because you got it all. You're the total package, you know? And that's basically what I'm trying to be, is the total package, because we all have seen athletic stuff. I can do all that stuff, the high risk and high reward type stuff. I mean, that's all cool and dandy, but I think my biggest thing that's holding me back or has held me back has been character, which is why I'm trying my most to present that as much as possible. I mean, maybe I've dialed back a little bit on some of the athleticism just to find a happy median with the character and then, you know, bring it all together at once. It's just basically coming down to like finding yourself, you know, finding what works for you and finding what's going to get you to the next level. And I think character is kind of like definitely my thing I need to like really drive home.
Well, and I think obviously, as I was saying earlier, the improvements are very, very much noticeable. If anybody's coming to ACW Proving Ground lately, they've seen the mark the Midnight Tribe has made. Same with Tampa Bay Pro. Hopefully at some more organizations soon, because you guys, just from the very minute you walk out through the curtain, you get an idea of what you guys are going for. And I think that's such a cool quality to have. You know, there's people who come out and you're just like, I don't even know what this guy's deal is. His name's on his tights, like there's nothing really more to it. But something about the way you guys present yourselves from the moment you step out, you're like, okay, these guys mean business, and you can kind of figure it out from there. So that's a very cool thing. I think you guys have captured lightning in a bottle there. So what advice would you give to someone who was interested in getting involved with wrestling? You know, what would you say starting out or getting into the business or getting further in the business? Just what advice would you give to somebody?
Advice I would give, especially someone trying to start out, is first and foremost, definitely find you a decent school. Like, do your research, do your homework. I mean, I'm glad that I did it the way I did it, because, you know, if I'd have just jumped on the first train, you know, and I come to find out the school that I'm thinking about ain't even around no more, and I don't know anybody from that school that's made it anywhere. So you want to do your research. You definitely want to make sure you're going to a legit organization. Definitely keep it. I mean, and the shape isn't always a big thing, but it definitely helps if you. I mean, I'm not saying you got to be some kind of rock monster or whatever, but just take care of yourself, dieting, stuff like that, because it's gonna tell in the ring. You know, cardio is a must. It's a must. No one likes to run. You know, no one, unless if you're one of those triathlon guys, no one likes to run. But I mean, cardio is gonna take you far. You know, especially because if their promoters are seeing that you're getting gas after 3-4 minutes, they're gonna cut your ring time. You're gonna be booked on matches where you're only getting 4 to 6 minutes and stuff like that, because you don't want to be that guy. You know, for me, I'm giving athletic advice because I don't feel like I'm a veteran enough to give like words of wisdom of what you should do on the next level, because I'm not at that level. So entry advice for me is definitely take care of yourself and definitely be thinking about a character and stick with it and really, really, really put the time in on it. You know, don't just, all right, this is what I want to portray myself as. You know, if you don't believe it, they're not going to believe it. So that's definitely where you want to start at.
Well, I mean, the A1 physique is like the epitome of what you can get to. So if you get even remotely close to that, I would say you're on the right path. So I like to put everybody on the spot with this question. What one thing would you change in wrestling if you could change it? Whether it was backstage, whether it was the fans, whether it was the in-ring product. If you could change one thing about wrestling in its entirety, what would it be?
Change one thing.
To give you an example, I'll say some people said, like, I wish wrestlers got paid more. Now, that's a pretty obvious one, you know, that you wish everybody could make a living doing this. But, like, could be politics. It could be about the training process. It could be anything. What comes to mind?
Well, I think that to bring more eyes onto the product and to make the avenue for wrestling a lot easier is, you know, like I said, from starting off with football, kids growing up, they know exactly what they got to do to make it to the NFL or try to make it to the NFL. It's a process that's been done for hundreds of years. I mean, for wrestling, you have to have it doesn't come easy. Like, you have to, like, I'm not saying it should be easier, but I'm just saying, like, the steps, the process. I mean, maybe offer that. I mean, find a way that, I mean, wrestling is big enough to where it should be like what you do in school should translate to this. You know, like, okay, if I do this, I'll have scouts looking at me for this. You know, to give kids or give them an incentive to like want to be a wrestler, because it's like everybody and their mom's not growing up wanting to be a wrestler. You know, I think politics is gonna be politics. I'm not really worried about that, because it don't matter where you go, you're gonna have that. So there's not asking to change that. It's a fight no one's ever gonna win. That's what makes America America. Everybody has the right to, free speech and do what they say what they want. And for almost for the most part, do what you want. So, not worried about the politics side, but definitely, I mean, find more innovative ways, especially with social media, and as that becomes bigger going into the future, just find an avenue that makes it easier for kids growing up. Because, like I said, it wasn't easy to find out to be a wrestler. In some countries, I know over England that's like a big deal. They start their kids off early. And in Japan they start their kids off early. You don't really hear too much of that over here. So, in America.
It seems like, to add on to your point, it seems like there's almost still a very carny mindset about wrestling. Like, how to become a wrestler is a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
They don't tell you or give you a blueprint of, if this is what you want to do, this is how you get there. And I think that's one of the great parts about doing interviews like this, is that you are kind of helping clear that path. But I completely agree with you. It is just really cloudy and mysterious, as if the business is trying to protect itself from opening up to a wider audience or more opportunities. So that's actually a very good point. So to wrap things up, what would you like to promote? How can people find you? Do you have any shows coming up in the next, let's say, 3 weeks from now or longer, that you'd like to turn some eyes to?
Well, I'm finally getting another Cruiserweight Championship match right here at ACW, May 25th at the the first responders show.
Oh, right.
Right here at the Gulfview Event Center. So I'm hoping that my fortunes with ACW Gold turns a little bit into my favor, especially being here as long as I have. I feel it's time to wear a little hardware around here, and then maybe that'll gain a little bit more respect for the group. The Midnight Tribe. We're treading a little light these days. With the incident with one of our members, David King. Wishing him a speedy recovery. But the carousel's gonna keep spinning. We're gonna keep doing our thing, and when he comes back, we'll just be even stronger. So definitely want to push that match out, and also in Tampa Bay Pro, we're gonna be in the Battle Royal. So hoping that we can bring our eyes to the Midnight Tribe and maybe make it a clean sweep for the month of May.
Well, Sage, I wish you the best of luck. Thank you so much for joining me, and hopefully we'll see you with a little bit of gold the next time we have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, boss.